The Tarkonian ship landed on a silent, broken planet, cold winds, dead trees, and nothing but ruins. The squad of 6 alien soldiers walked with heavy armor, scanning for survivors of the crash. Their leader, Commander Vex, had one goal: capture the strange life form that destroyed their drone fleet 2 days ago. "Heat signature detected," said a soldier, pointing toward a half-buried wreck. They moved closer and found a human, half covered in metal debris, his leg burnt and arm bleeding. He looked weak. No claws, no horns, no body armor. Just soft flesh, thin bones, and 2 eyes that calmly stared at them. "Is that it?" One soldier laughed. "That soft thing defeated 3 drones?" Commander Vex frowned. "Be careful. There's something wrong here." The human smiled. They brought him to their ship. No restraints. They thought he didn't need any. Inside, they placed him in a cold steel cell. His injuries were untreated. His food was old protein jelly meant for prisoners. The human did not complain. He sat there, bleeding and silent, staring through the glass. A young alien tech officer, Malix, asked, "Why is he not screaming?" "He's hurt," Commander Vex replied. "He's broken. He'll talk soon." But the human didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't even ask for help. 2 days passed. They tried questioning him. No answers. They raised the temperature, lowered the oxygen. Still nothing. They even played sound waves to cause pain in the brain. The human simply closed his eyes and smiled. "Again, this is not normal," Malix whispered. That night, the guards watched the cameras. The human was standing now. His burnt leg should not allow it. His ribs were broken. Yet he stood, straight and still. And then he began to walk, slow, steady steps. Weak, but walking. One guard laughed. "What's he trying to prove? He'll fall in seconds." But the human didn't fall. He walked in circles, over and over. Limping, dragging, bleeding, but walking. Commander Vex was troubled. "They feel no pain?" he asked. "No," said the scientist. "They feel everything, but they keep moving." Vex stared at the screen. Why? Later in the med lab they ran scans. Blood showed toxic levels, bones cracked, muscles torn. "This creature should be unconscious," the scientist said. "Dead, even." The human looked at them, eyes half red, half closed, and said softly, "Is this all you've got?" The lab fell silent. A meeting was called. This species. How did they evolve? Malix asked. Commander Vex stared at a screen showing Earth data. Hostile planet, unstable weather, predators everywhere, disease, famine, wars. Another alien whispered, "So they didn't grow strong. They just refused to die." Back in the cell, the human sat cross-legged, whispering to himself. The camera tried reading his lips. He was repeating one sentence. "Pain means you're not finished." A day later, alarms rang. The human had broken the glass with his bare hands. Bleeding, fingers shattered, but he had escaped. Guards rushed. The human was limping through the hall, leaving bloody footprints, but still walking. They fired stun beams. He fell, rolled, got back up. They fired again. He grabbed a pipe, swung it like a sword, knocked one soldier out. The others hesitated. "Why is he not stopping?" One shouted. Commander Vex screamed, "Because that's what humans are." They finally caught him again. Put him in double chains, locked behind energy fields, his face bruised, his body broken. Still he laughed. A low, tired laugh. "You think we're weak because we bleed?" He said, "You have no idea what we are." Malix stood outside his cell, staring. "Why don't you give up?" The human looked at him with fire in his eyes. "Because giving up doesn't change anything. It just makes you die faster." Malix shivered. The human lay on the cold metal table of the alien lab, motionless, arms and legs strapped down with magnetic cuffs. Bright lights above flickered as the Tarkonian Scientists prepared their tools. Commander Vex stood behind a glass wall, arms crossed, watching every move with narrowed eyes. Begin the dissection, he ordered. They were not planning to kill the human, not yet. They needed answers. How had this fragile creature survived? So much pain? Why didn't he break? Why didn't he stop fighting? One of the scientists, Dr. Nexo, inserted a long silver needle into the human's arm. He expected a scream. He got none. Instead, the human opened one eye slowly and looked straight at him. That eye held no fear, no anger, just patience. And something else. Something that made Dr. Nexo step back for a moment. They scanned his bones. The structure was weaker than many galactic species, hollow in places, easily breakable under high pressure. His muscles were torn in several areas. His blood showed signs of extreme stress. By all logic, the human should be unconscious or dead, but he wasn't. In fact, his heart rate was steady. Strong, like it was getting stronger with every test. This is impossible, said one of the younger medtechs. His cells are adapting in real time. Impossible doesn't apply to humans, apparently. Vex replied coldly. Another needle slid under the skin, this time into his chest. The human didn't even blink. His jaw tightened for a moment, then relaxed again. Malix, the tech officer, watched from a corner. He had been reading Earth's historical records over the last 2 nights. Wars, natural disasters, soldiers walking for days without food, children surviving in freezing mountains. A strange image was forming in his mind. Humans didn't survive despite pain. They survived because of it. He leaned closer to the glass and whispered, "They don't stop because they know what happens when they do." The human suddenly turned his head toward Malix, as if he had heard him through the wall. He gave the smallest nod. The lab fell silent. Malix's skin turned cold. Later that day, Vex called a meeting with his top officers. He showed them the data from the tests, bone density charts, nerve reaction speeds, muscle fiber tears. "This is not about physical strength," he said. "It's mental." "They are mentally resistant to suffering," one officer said. "No." Malix corrected him quietly. "They feel the suffering. They just keep moving anyway." That night Malix couldn't sleep. He replayed the footage of the human's escape attempt over and over again. Broken leg, bleeding arms, still walking, still fighting. He returned to the med-lab. The human was awake. Strapped again, still bruised, but calm. Malix stepped closer. "Why don't you give up?" The human's lips curved into a slight smile. "Because quitting doesn't heal anything. It just makes pain useless." Malix hesitated. "Aren't you scared?" "Of what?" the human asked. "Of dying." The human paused. "We've lived with death beside us for thousands of years. We don't fear it. We just don't invite it in until we're done." Malix stood frozen. The lights flickered again. Outside the window, thunder rolled across the dead sky of the planet. The storm was coming. But inside that cell, inside that fragile body, something far more powerful was already awake. The next morning, something strange happened. The scanner showed the human's internal injuries were healing too fast. Realigning, muscle tissue repairing. All while he was awake, conscious, speaking. No medicine. No nanotech, the head medic reported. His mind is driving the repair. Commander Vex stared in silence. Then finally said, "We've been looking at humans like animals. But maybe there's something else. Something that evolution built differently. A weapon?" Someone asked. "No," Malix said. "A survivor. The kind that doesn't need claws or armor, because they carry something inside." "What is it?" Malix looked at the screen, where the human was now standing in his cell again, still injured, but standing tall, a will that doesn't break. The entire room went quiet. A soft alarm beeped. The human looked directly into the camera and held up a message. He had written in his own blood on the wall. "We don't die easy. And that was the moment fear began to spread, not among the humans, but among the ones who had captured them. Because now, they weren't sure what they had in their cage. And deep down, some of them were starting to believe ... they hadn't captured a prisoner, they had awakened a storm. The Tarkonians believed in trials, brutal, unforgiving tests that decided who was strong enough to live and who wasn't. For thousands of years, their warriors were shaped through these trials. Only the ones who passed them became soldiers. The rest became nothing. And now they had a human, the one who had survived pain, refused to break, and stood up even when his body was falling apart. Commander Vex wanted answers, but more than that. He wanted proof. Was this human truly different, or just lucky? So he gave the order, put him through the fire test. The fire test was not a real fire, it was worse. A death maze built under the planet's surface. No light, no comfort. Just rooms filled with acid rain, blade walls, heat storms, robotic beasts, and oxygen zones that lasted only minutes. No Tarkonian rookie had ever survived it fully, and they were going to throw an injured, armorless, weaponless human into it, just to see how long he could last. When the cell doors opened, the human was chained and escorted by 4 guards. His face was calm, his limp was still there. Blood still dried on his skin. He didn't ask where they were taking him. He just walked. Vex watched from a dark control room. Malik stood beside him, nervous. He can't survive this. He's still hurt. Vex said nothing. The gates of the fire test opened. The human stepped inside. The first room sealed shut behind him, and the countdown began. The first trap was heat, air so hot it boiled metal in seconds. The walls glowed red. Cameras lost visibility for 30 seconds. When they came back online, the human was crawling through a vent in the ceiling, using a broken pipe to keep the burning floor away from his body. How did he find the vent? One technician asked. He listened, Malix whispered, watching closely. He heard the airflow. The next room had swinging blades, fast, sharp, and coated with a paralyzing poison. The ceiling moved down slowly, pushing him toward the blades. Vex leaned forward. This is where he dies. But the human didn't run. He stood still, watching the pattern. Then, without hesitation, he sprinted forward, sliding under one blade, jumping between 2, and rolling just before the poison gas hit. The room exploded behind him. He didn't look back. His arm was bleeding again. The stitches had opened. But he kept moving. The third room was nearly pitch black. Robotic beasts, tall spider-like machines with metal legs and scanning eyes, waited in silence. As soon as he entered, they activated. 3 of them, all faster than him, all stronger. The human picked up a shard of glass from the floor. That was all he had. Then the feed went dark. The room had no cameras. Vex stared at the black screen. No sound. No visuals. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Everyone thought it was over, until the doors on the other side opened. And the human walked out, limping harder, covered in oil, blood, and pieces of broken robot limbs stuck to his back. One robotic leg was in his hand, now a makeshift weapon. He looked up at the camera, breathing hard. Then kept walking. Room after room. Trap after trap. He kept moving. Slow. In pain. Sometimes crawling, sometimes dragging one leg, but he never stopped. Vex leaned back in his chair, speechless. This is not survival, Malik said softly. This is purpose. 2 hours later, the last room opened. The guards were already waiting with shock rifles. The human stepped out, barely standing, blood dripping from both hands, and yet he smiled. A small, tired, dangerous smile. As if to say, you tried. I'm still here. The guards didn't move. They didn't shoot. For the first time, they hesitated. Back in the command center, the silence was heavy. One officer asked, "What now? What do we do with him?" Commander Vex didn't answer. He stared at the screen where the human stood, hands on his knees, catching his breath. Then he turned away and walked toward his private chambers, leaving the room in silence. As the doors shut behind him, Malix whispered to himself, "We wanted to see if he would survive the fire. But we didn't realize he is the fire." It started as whispers. A rumor from a forgotten outpost, a damaged broadcast, a message half lost in static. One of them is loose, one human, still alive, still fighting. The Tarkonian High Command didn't believe it at first. It was impossible. One human alone, injured, weaponless, had escaped the fire test and vanished into the planet's wastelands. But the evidence kept arriving. A Tarkonian patrol station was found empty, doors broken from the inside, all security systems fried, walls covered in red handprints. The soldiers stationed there were gone, not killed, gone. No bodies, no blood, trails. Just silence, and a message scratched into a steel door with something sharp. "He walks." Commander Vex sat in silence inside his command ship. He watched the growing list of incidents, one after another. Always the same pattern: systems going dark, soldiers missing, security footage corrupted, and always a trace of something. Human, not an army, not a ship. Just one man, the escapee, the weapon without armor. He had no supplies, no backup. Yet he kept moving, kept striking, and that terrified them. In the outer colonies, Tarkonian citizens began to panic. Mothers held their children tighter, guards doubled their patrols. The phrase "he walks" started appearing as graffiti, scratched into doors, written in alien blood, painted in red across entire walls. Young cadets, once proud to serve the Empire, now asked questions in whispers. Is it true? Can humans not die? Is he really alone? Are more coming? At a mining colony on Moon Zeta 9, a message was intercepted from one of the surviving soldiers. His voice was shaking. It's not just what he does, it's how he looks at you. Like he knows you're already defeated. He doesn't yell, doesn't threaten. He just walks toward you, and you run. The message ended with static and a final word: mercy. Not long after, another fleet outpost stopped sending signals. When rescue teams arrived, they found the base completely intact. No signs of a battle, just one hallway with the lights still flickering. There, on the wall, written in white chalk from a supply box, was a message: leave them alone, or I come to your home. No name. No threat, just a warning. And the room was cold. Very cold. As if something had passed through it, and the walls remembered. The High Council met on the central world of Vexor Prime. Dozens of alien species sat around a glass table, reading the humans' reports. One counselor, gray-skinned and wise, spoke first. We thought they were soft. Another with golden eyes added, we saw their lack of armor and called it weakness. An elder general clenched his fists. We tried to break one. He broke our fear instead. They debated war, they debated silence, but no one spoke of victory, because deep down, they all felt the same truth. They were not ready for humans. Malix, the young tech officer who had once watched the human in his cell, now sat quietly in a deep corner of the ship. He replayed the footage of the fire test again and again, every motion, every injury, every refusal to quit. He whispered to himself, he's not fighting for revenge. He's warning us. The door behind him slid open. Commander Vex entered. His face was tired, his pride cracked. They fear him now, Malix said. Still looking at the screen, Vex didn't respond. He only looked at the footage where the human, bloody and burned, stood with a broken metal pipe as his only weapon. Why do you think he's still alive? Vex finally asked. Malix answered softly, because he hasn't finished what he started. Out in the black night of space, the human drifted silently through the shadows of the ruined moon base. He was alone, yes, but not broken. Not lost. He walked with purpose. His body still ached. His legs still hurt. But he had learned something in those fire-filled rooms. They weren't afraid of his strength, that they were afraid of his will. Somewhere in a Tarkonian classroom, a young child raised his hand and asked his teacher, "Is the human real?" The teacher hesitated, then whispered, "Yes, he's real. Will he come here?" "No," the teacher said, looking out the window. Then after a pause, "Unless we give him a reason." The fear had spread, not from a weapon, not from a fleet, but from a man with no armor. And a message that echoed across the stars. "I don't need to win. I just need to outlast you." The Tarkonians had fought many species in the galaxy. They had crushed insectoid swarms, outlasted stone-skinned giants, outwitted machines with perfect logic. But none of them prepared them for the humans, a species that didn't evolve to conquer, didn't build to dominate, yet refused to break. Commander Vex stood before the holoscreen, watching slowed-down recordings of the humans escape again, over and over. Every frame, every wound, every impossible movement that shouldn't have happened. He should have died, Vex muttered, but the human hadn't. Instead, he had survived wounds that would have killed any other species within minutes. His blood loss was critical, his muscles torn, his bones cracked, yet he walked, fought, and kept going. How? Vex whispered, far away, deep in the archives of the Galactic Research Station on Arco 7, a different kind of war was unfolding. A war of knowledge. Scientists, biologists, neural experts from dozens of alien races gathered in silence around a table. On it was a single question: what makes humans keep going? Pain resistance? Asked a green-scaled scholar. Not enough, said a gray-feathered elder. We scanned his nerves. He feels everything. Fear control? Wrong again. His brain lights up with fear. Just like ours. A young researcher, smaller than the rest, finally stood up. He tapped the glass screen and showed a video. Earth history, real footage of humans surviving. Avalanches, earthquakes, war zones. Soldiers carrying friends with broken arms. Children saving pets during wildfires. Old people walking miles through snow to feed neighbors. These people, he said, voice shaking, don't ignore pain. They carry it. The room fell quiet. Pain doesn't stop them, the young alien continued. It becomes part of them. Something they accept, something they even learn from. A whisper moved across the table like a slow wave. They evolved. With pain, but not just in the body, in the heart. Somewhere in a distant sector, the human was still moving, not to destroy, but to find something. His path was slow, careful, deliberate, not a rampage. A mission. One night, he entered an abandoned outpost. It was silent. Broken, no signs of life. He found a Tarkonian scout inside, young, alone, bleeding from a collapsed support beam. The scout aimed his blaster. Stay back, he screamed. The human raised both hands slowly. He didn't speak, just dropped his weapon. The scout was confused. You're not here to kill me? The human walked forward, picked up the beam, freed the young soldier. Silence hung between them. Why help me? The alien asked. The human finally spoke, tired and calm. Because pain taught us something you forgot. What? The human looked at him. Mercy. Back at the Central Command, Malik sat alone in the darkness. He opened a sealed file. Human psychology reports. Earth literature. Quotes from their history. He read in silence, his eyes scanning over the ancient words. Pain is temporary. Quitting lasts forever. The strongest hearts are the ones that have been broken and still beat. We suffer, we endure, and still we rise. He leaned back, exhaled slowly, and understood something terrifying. They didn't get stronger despite pain. He whispered. They became strong because of it. At the same time, a rogue Tarkonian captain ignored his orders. and launched a strike team to capture the human again. He wanted glory, revenge. He thought numbers would win. 12 elite hunters. Scanners, drones, traps, they dropped onto the surface of the moon. Only one came back. Shaking. Silent. His helmet was cracked. His armor burnt. When the generals questioned him, he finally spoke 3 words. He didn't run. The room went cold. Soon, alien scholars started writing new reports. They called humans the pain-bound. Creatures not born to dominate, but born to resist. Species who bled, cried, broke, and yet kept walking forward. One message began appearing across intercepted signals, spreading from base to base. It wasn't written by a human. It was written by an alien soldier who had fought, won, and lived. The message said, if you face a human, and they are hurt, be afraid. Because when they are in pain, they become something else. They become unstoppable. In the darkness of space, the human sat alone near a campfire made from broken ship wires and fuel cells. His hands trembled. His eyes stared into the flames. He remembered Earth. He remembered his friends. He remembered pain. He didn't hate it anymore. It had shaped him, and now it was guiding him, because he knew something the Tarkonians didn't. Pain doesn't end you. It awakens you. And somewhere on a distant world, a young alien girl listened to her father tell the story of the human. She asked, is he real? The father nodded. Doesn't pain hurt him? He smiled softly. Oh, it hurts him, but pain doesn't stop him. He leaned down, whispered in her ear. It makes him stronger. Asterisk, the room was made of glass and silence, far above the war-torn planet of Varnes. Orbiting in a massive station called High Reach, the leaders of 3 empires sat in cold metal chairs, staring at the same screen. The human's face blinked across it. Grainy footage from an old surveillance drone. No armor. No weapon. No army. And yet, he was winning. 1 base lost. 3 outposts evacuated. Dozens of elite soldiers missing. Not dead. Not defeated. Just gone. Commander Vex stood at the center of the room, staring down at the ground. He had no excuses left, only data. Painful, unbelievable data. We have a problem, said the voice from the shadows. It belonged to the Renthal Prime, ruler of the Outer 9 systems, cold-eyed and older than any war alive. This creature, what does it want? Vex lifted his head. It wants us to stop. Stop what? Vex didn't blink. Everything. A silence followed, thick and sharp. You mean, said the golden-skinned diplomat from the Iliari. Clans, stop the torture, the captures, the war? Vex nodded once. It warned us. We didn't listen. And now it fights alone? Another voice asked. No, Vex said quietly. Now it fights for everyone who couldn't. Malik sat in a quiet hallway just outside the chamber. He could hear muffled voices through the thick walls. Angry, confused, frightened. He wasn't surprised. They still didn't understand. They thought the human was a mistake, a threat to be removed. But Malik's had watched him from the beginning. From the first scan to the first blood drop. He had read human history. He had listened to their voices, and he had started to believe something no Tarkonian had ever believed before. Humans were never meant to rule the galaxy, but they were born to survive it. In the shadows of a forgotten asteroid field, the human stood beside a crashed Tarkonian ship. He had rescued 2 prisoners, an avian from the Nabari species, and a silent, scared insectoid child from the inner moons of Brow. They had expected torture. Instead, the human gave them water, food, safety. He built a fire, wrapped the child in thermal cloth, didn't speak unless spoken to. The avian couldn't stop shaking. Why? She asked. Why help us? The human looked up at the dark sky. Because you're still alive. But we're not human. He looked her straight in the eyes. Doesn't matter. You're hurting. That's enough. Back on High Reach, debates turned into arguments. Destroy Earth? Impossible. Too far. Too well defended. Assassinate the rogue. Human. They'd already tried. 3 times. No survivors. Spread lies? Call him a criminal? A traitor? But every race that met him told the same story. He helped the weak. He fought the powerful. He saved people who weren't even his own. He wasn't a threat. He was a symbol. And symbols. Don't die easy. In the shadows, rebellion sparked. Young Tarkonian soldiers who had seen the human started disobeying orders. Small colonies refused to report their sightings. Some even left food and supplies behind, and sometimes they vanished too. They weren't afraid of him anymore. They wanted to join him. A message began spreading in underground channels. No signature, no location. Just a simple phrase. He fights for those who can't. It reached prison ships. Slave mines. War camps. And hope that dangerous, forbidden's word began to rise. On Earth, far away, in a hidden base deep under the old mountains, a signal was received. Encrypted. Faint. Scrambled, but clear enough. The human had sent a message. I'm alive. The reply took hours to send. We're coming. Inside the High Council, the debate had shifted. No longer, can we stop him? But what happens if more of them come? What if Earth sends others? A terrified diplomat whispered. Commander. Vex finally turned, eyes cold. Then we learn what fear really is. That night, Malik stood alone at the edge of the observation deck. Stars spread endlessly before him, cold and distant. He thought of the human, still walking through fire, carrying the broken, speaking softly, fighting back only when pushed. He didn't wear armor. He was the armor. Malix took a deep breath. And, in that quiet moment, he whispered something not as an officer, but as someone who finally understood. They tried to crush you with pain, a pause, but you turned pain into power. Somewhere in a dark cave on a broken moon, the human patched his wounds with cloth and hope. He looked up. Storm clouds gathered, and still he stood. One more day. One more fight. One more promise to keep. He didn't know if Earth had heard him. He didn't know if help would come. But he did know one thing. He wasn't done yet. The sky above the mining colony of Reelhast turned red. It wasn't fire. It was the arrival of something unexpected. Something ancient. Something human. 3 Tarkonian warships had surrounded the colony, preparing to erase it, not because of resources or politics, but because whispers had spread that the rogue human had passed through here, helped the weak, freed the prisoners, left behind more than scars. He had left behind hope, and that terrified the Tarkonian Empire more than anything else. Commander Vex stood on the bridge of the lead warship, arms crossed. He was tired. Not physically, spiritually. Every order he gave now echoed in his head louder than the next. Destroy. Suppress. Control. And none of it had worked. Not against one man, now. Earth had answered. The ships that appeared in orbit were small, not flashy or massive like Tarkonian dreadnoughts, but they moved with purpose. And they carried people with eyes like storms. The first transmission came. In a calm voice, "We're here for our brother." Vex froze. He looked out the window at the fleet approaching. Humans. Not an army. Not soldiers in power armor. Just humans. Pilots. Medics, engineers, fighters, ordinary people who had seen one of their own suffer and had decided that was enough. They came. Malix whispered beside him, not because they were commanded, but because he matters to them. They came, Vex said quietly, because pain shared becomes strength. Down below, inside a cavern beneath the colony, the rogue human knelt beside a wounded Tarkonian boy. Yes, a Tarkonian. The son of a civilian, caught in the middle of another empire's fear. The boy was bleeding, barely conscious. The human pressed cloth to the wound, whispered calming words. The boy looked up, confused. "Why help me? My people hurt you. The human paused. Then said simply, that's not who you are. Footsteps echoed in the dark. 3 shapes appeared. Humans in light armor, mud on their boots. Smiles behind helmets. One knelt beside him. You look like crap, she said. He smiled for the first time in weeks. You took long enough. She handed him a flask. Still alive? Of course, he said, helping the child sit up. I had work to finish. Across the galaxy, recordings of their rescue spread like fire through dry grass. Not just images of battle or destruction, but images of humans pulling others out of rubble, of a human giving his jacket to a shivering alien child, of strangers. Different species, sharing fire, food, and tears, and one message played on loop in underground channels. We don't need armor. We have each other. In places where war had crushed hearts for centuries, this message felt like light. In mining camps, prisoners carved it into walls. In ships, old soldiers whispered it like a prayer. In the capital halls of 3 different alien governments, leaders began asking themselves questions they had buried long ago. What if strength isn't how hard you hit? What if it's how many people you lift? Vex stood before the High Council for the final time. He placed his command badge on the table. I chased a ghost, he said. A man with no armor, no fleet, no world behind him. He looked up, and he defeated me. Not with weapons, not with armies, but with mercy. Some mocked him, some listened, but one thing was certain. The old way was dying, and something new, something human, was waking. Back on Earth, the returning ships were greeted with silence and tears. The rogue human, bandaged but standing, stepped onto the soil he hadn't seen in years. He looked around at the people waiting, friends, strangers, leaders, even the ones who had once doubted him. No one spoke. He didn't need them to. He turned, saw the small group of aliens who had come with him, refugees, rebels, survivors. He nodded toward the gates. Welcome home. That night, in a quiet forest, under the stars, he sat by the fire again. This time, he wasn't alone. Laughter echoed in the trees. Stories were told. Scars were compared. Some cried. Some simply leaned on each other and said nothing at all. And in that warm circle of broken, healing people, one truth lived in every heart. They were still afraid, still hurting, but they were together. And that was enough. Because when you have each other, truly, deeply, you don't need steel on your skin. You don't need to be made of metal or stone. You just need to stand up one more time. Far beyond the stars, in places still untouched by Earth, a new phrase began to spread. One that didn't speak of war, one that didn't echo fear, but something simpler, something powerful, something human. They walk without armor, and still they win.